was at Meta.
I worked on Valorant as a game dev.
Worked on the screens for the first BlackBerry phones that they released.
26 an hour.
$50 an hour.
$9K a month.
58.
Who cares if you're making a lot of money if you're like sad and lonely? Today, we're at Hack the North, Canada's biggest hackathon, and we're going to be going around asking people about their internship journey and how much they've made along the way. I actually got interviewed in this as well, so make sure to stick around till the end to check that out.
My name is Dora. I study computer science at the University of Waterloo, and I'm in my 4th year.
Where did you intern over the summer?
I interned as a software engineer at Riot Games.
Is that the company that made Valorant?
Yeah, I worked on Valorant as a game dev.
Very cool. Was this like your first internship, second, third, fourth?
It was my 5th internship. I made 58 USD.
Can you tell us a bit about your journey to Riot?
So for my first internship, I worked at Fair, which I found on Waterloo Works. They paid 27. For my second internship, I worked at Coinbase, which paid us 50. For my third one, I worked at LinkedIn, 50 American dollars. Fourth one, I went back to Fair and they paid me 42 Canadian dollars.
What sort of advice would you have for someone who's looking for an internship?
My best advice is to really build your network and just leverage more senior students or people at your previous internships. Ask them for connections and things like that. Honestly, a lot of people are willing to help students and interns. So I'd say just don't be afraid of applying. There's no harm in applying, and companies usually like it when you apply again, even if you've been rejected.
Awesome, solid advice. Hi.
Hi. My name's Emily. I went to school here at the University of Waterloo. I just graduated in April from systems design engineering.
Where was the last internship that you did? I assume now you're working full-time?
Yeah, my last internship was at Meta, where I was a technical program manager, so TPM.
How much were you making while you were interning at Meta?
$50 an hour. My first internship, I was at Pivotal. They no longer exist. They were acquired by VMware. But I was working IT support there. I was making like $19 an hour. After that, I was at TD Bank as a software developer. I think it was like $22 an hour. After that, I found a job at like a really small startup. It's called Transparent Kitchen. I worked as an engineer there. I think I was making around the same, like $22 or something. I returned there because I decided I didn't want to do software anymore. I wanted to be a PM, but it was really hard to break into PM without any PM experience. So I was like, could you hire me as your first PM even though I have no PM experience? Got a slight raise of like $25 an hour. I was at Autodesk after that as a product manager, where I think I was making like $26, $27 an hour.
And after your last co-op, now you're working full-time. Where are you working right now?
I'm currently at Uber for full-time. I'm part of their APM program, so their Associate Product Management program, and it's a 2-year-long program where you rotate between 3 different teams, and then you stay on your last team permanently.
You start off in software, pivoted to PM. What sort of advice would you have for someone looking for an internship?
Try and stay true to what you're actually interested in and what you think your where your strengths and weaknesses are, because I think there can be a lot of noise, especially when you're like trying to chase the most like prestigious companies or like get clout for where you're working at. It can be hard to like lose track of what you actually like. I remember being like really conflicted between like staying in software and like going the software route versus PM. But at the end of the day, I was like, I feel like my skills and interests align so much better with PM, even though all my friends around me were in software. I think the second biggest thing is that I feel like online, especially when you're on LinkedIn or you like meet all these people with really impressive achievements, it can be really overwhelming of like, oh, how do I get from where I am right now to where they are? Because sometimes it seems kind of impossible. But I think like just being consistent with, like your efforts, keep applying to jobs and just focus on what you're doing instead of getting lost in terms of comparing yourself. So just focus on doing your best and like progressing in your own journey.
That was some really good advice. Where can people hear more from you?
Yeah, so I actually have a podcast I co-host with my friend called Hello Real World, and we talk about job stuff sometimes, tech stuff, and just living life, learning to become an adult.
Check out their podcast, Hello Real World. We're here with Kevin Lau, one of the co-founders of Hack the North.
What's up?
Where'd you go to school? What'd you study? What are you doing now?
I went to Waterloo, studied systems design engineering here. I'm currently a product manager at a small startup in San Francisco.
When you were in school, what kind of internships were you doing?
My co-ops were a little varied. My first one, I worked at BlackBerry actually, doing hardware engineering. I worked on the screens for the first touchscreen BlackBerry phones that they released. I think I was doing around 18 an hour. Then I worked at a 3-person startup doing web dev, minimum wage. I think it was like $11 or $12 an hour back then. And then I did like growth and data engineering at a startup, 20 people. It's called Brilliant now, which actually they sponsor a lot of YouTube videos now. They're kind of big. But that was back in 2014 for me. $30 an hour. Then I worked in venture capital for another summer, getting to like the 35-ish. And then I did a software engineering internship at a AI robotics startup, also in SF. I think it was also around 30 to 35. My last co-op was also software engineering at a Waterloo founder company, actually, but also based in Redwood City in California. I actually got it through the Social Capital Fellowship. I think I was making like $9K a month.
And then once you graduated, how did you eventually get to Tome where you are now?
My path to product was just through the Uber APM program. It was a whole journey, but I applied for it, somehow hustled, got the job. Was there for about 3 years, then switched over to Instacart for another like year and 3 or 4 months or so, and then eventually found Tome through a post that someone at Greylock, the venture capital firm, made on LinkedIn.
What sort of advice would you have for students looking for internships and trying to break into tech?
When I was at Waterloo, I kind of got sucked into the Cali or bus thing too. And looking back, some of my mentors when I was in school kind of tried to steer me otherwise and telling me that, hey, it's actually about the learning and like the titles will come, the salary will come. Just like make sure you are competent and focus on finding the best possible learning environment. I think at Waterloo, you also have hella options and it's kind of overwhelming sometimes. But I think what will help you the most is if you're able to just pick something. For me, it was like, do I do engineering? Do I do product management? Do I do venture capital? I didn't make a decision. I tried to pursue all three. I half-assed all of them. You really want to full-ass one thing and then, yeah, optimize for learning. That's what I would say.
Awesome. Solid advice. Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks, man.
Can you start off by telling us what your name is, what year you're in, what program you're at, which school you go to?
My name is Nick. I go to Waterloo for computer science. I'm in my 3B term.
Can you tell us a bit about where you worked last term?
I worked at OutSchool. It's a ed tech startup that does online classes for kids.
Can you tell us what you made at your last co-op?
$80-$60 a month.
Nice.
My first co-op, I worked at Fair. I was doing front end. I made $26 an hour. After that, I went to Wealthsimple, where I worked on a front end platform team. I made like $38 an hour there. After that, I went to Kiavi. I did data infrastructure, $9K a month there.
There are many students right now that are probably struggling to find jobs. The job market isn't very good. Do you have any sort of words of motivation or any sort of advice to give? How should they approach the job market?
Your first co-op, just do it because it's your first co-op. It doesn't need to be good. It probably won't be good. It's going to be just a learning experience of like what it's like to do a co-op. From there, you can try different things on each co-op and try to figure out what you like. Even if it's a bad co-op, now you know what you don't like. You still gain something out of the co-op, and it brings you one step closer to like what you actually want to do. I think that's really how co-op should be treated. Like you have like 40 years of your life after you graduate to work. Why do you care about like making it to Google? Like your fifth co-op, you have to make it to Google. You have to make it to New York, have to make it to California. You have your whole life to work. Whether you make it there like as a new grad, during it as an intern, or like 10 years from now, job is still a job. There are so many more things to do with your life. Who cares if you're making a lot of money if you're like sad and lonely? At the end of the day, you have to think about like what makes you happy, what makes you fulfilled, and that's really what matters. The only person's opinion who matters is yours.
Oh, shit. And that's a wrap. Like on a tangent. He was like going on. I was like, damn.
Shit. My apologies. It doesn't look that good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No problem. What are your names?
Nico.
Nico?
Edlin.
Edlin?
By the way, our friend really wanted to get your signature, but then when he came back, you were gone, so now he's really mad.
Oh, so is that for him?
Yeah. No,
So-
it's still like rubbing.
Okay. Have fun.